Well, just for Sidekicks, I will say, sort of right off the bat, this was definitely a vast improvement on Spike at Your Service in terms of it being a Spike episode. Because Spike at Your Service really was, quite frankly, just an Applejack episode, really, that just had Spike in it quite a lot. So this definitely works a lot better as a Spike episode. And overall, it definitely fitted into that sort of category of just sort of episodes that were kind of fun, as opposed to having like any kind of deep kind of moral or thought-provoking kind of message to them. This was definitely more a sort of fun kind of episode, like Too Many Pinkie Pies or Winter Wrap Up or It's About Time. As that kind of episode, it had a lot of great stuff in it. It had a lot of problems at the same time. I've definitely got a lot to say about this one actually, but it's sort of like a mixed bag, really, very much. There's as many problems with this one as there are good things, really. First of all, just talk quickly about most of the good things. Another great performance by Fluttershy, really. I loved watching her in this episode. I've kind of come to realise one of the problems with Magic Jewel, I think, is her sort of cowardly, sort of timid, kind of non-assertive kind of nature was a little exaggerated in that episode. It went a bit too far, really. That's maybe one problem I have with that episode, which I maybe didn't spot at first. But here it's kind of sort of brought down to a more sort of bearable kind of level, and she is just that kind of, of course, I didn't think you'd want to bother, kind of thing, and that's great. That's the sort of level of Fluttershy sort of cowardice, sort of less confident kind of attitude that I do love to sort of see. And we get a bit of Spike and Fluttershy, which is something I've been craving to see ever since the very first episode. We've not really seen the two of them sort of bond particularly much ever since the very first episode, when they really hit it off, like right off the bat. So we get to see some of that at last, so that was great. And we get to see Tank again, at last. Apparently he was in Too Many Pinkie Pies, but I guess I just missed him. But he's in this episode for quite a decent amount, and there's a lot of sort of focus on him, and there's a lot of focus on all 6 of the pets. And unlike in May the Best Pet Win, we get to see a sort of decent amount of them. And from what I saw of them in this episode, I think I really want to see more of them, really. They're a lot of fun to watch. It's just sort of great, this sort of non-dialogue, sort of physical humour kind of stuff. It's really sort of interesting, that's kind of sort of shenanigans with Spike trying to control them kind of thing. Again, like the saving life, now I owe you a life debt kind of thing in Spike at Your Service, maybe that's kind of a kids show kind of cliche, but at least it wasn't the whole focus of the episode like it was in Spike at Your Service. Particularly Angel, obviously, seeing him sort of act like a complete dick, and act like a complete dick to someone other than Fluttershy for once. That was satisfying to see as well, and that was pretty humorous. The sort of physical things that he does, and that sort of facial expressions he produces. Tank obviously was great. I thought Gummy was a little wasted in this one. He didn't have much to do. There are a couple of recurring themes in this episode which kind of irritated me a little bit, because it is something that's been done before. First of all, Spike being confused by Owlowishes, thinking he's saying who the whole time when really he's just making a noise. That joke was basically beaten to death in All's Well That Ends Well. It had already gotten very sort of unfunny by the end of that episode, and now you're beating it to death again in this one. It really wasn't even that funny in the first place, and to sort of beat us over the head with it in one episode and then to do it again in another one. Oh god, it makes me want to throw something. Kind of funny, really, that Spike sort of has no self-control over his tongue, keeps eating the gems, sort of, it's beyond his control almost, does sort of make me think, even when I was watching the episode for the first time, watching him go around, collect these gems, I'm sort of thinking to myself, well, he's just going to eat them, sort of inadvertently, like sort of beyond his control at some point anyway. So why is it so crucial that he has these gems to make this jewel cake in the first place? He's blatantly just going to eat them, and what do you know, that's exactly what he did. Obviously this jewel cake is sort of the very sort of weak motivation for Spike to go out and try to earn these jewels, for taking care of their pets kind of thing. That kind of, to me, felt like a missed opportunity, because so far this season they have sort of tried to do a few things that we as the fans have wanted to see. We've seen Rainbow Dash apply to be a Wonderbolt, we've seen Discord again, we've seen Trixie again. Something we haven't seen at all this season, which I think we as the fans really wanted to see, was more of a development of the Spike-Rarity relationship. And I think this episode could have been a lot better, really, if maybe Spike's motivation to take care of the pets had more to do with maybe him wanting to get closer to Rarity, perhaps. I mean, obviously that would work perfectly as a motivation for him wanting to take care of Oval, but maybe the other 5 could then come in and say, hey, Spike, if you're taking care of our pet, maybe you could take care of ours as well. And so, that felt like a missed opportunity to me. And of course, really, throughout this season, has just been a complete FU to Rarity, really. There's just been no real development of her character at all. No Rarity episodes, for one thing. Sleepless in Ponyville was really the only episode where she's been given a decent amount of screen time and sort of been given a decent relationship. But there's been no Spike Rarity stuff whatsoever this season. Well, I tell a lie, there has been a little bit, but for what there has been, it's been a step backwards, really. It's gone back to the sort of situation they were in Season 1. Spike is just fawning over her and Rarity just sort of doesn't care, Prime example, in this episode, the element of generosity gives Spike the smallest gem. She's supposed to sort of be quite close with Spike. She's supposed to be sort of quite fond of him now. That certainly did seem to be an impression I got from Secret of My Excess and Dragon Quest, and now suddenly she just doesn't care anymore and she gives him the smallest gem. I'm not really bothered about her being the element of generosity because, again, that's all sort of, continuity kind of thing, but it seemed a bit sort of out of character for her. It does sort of seem like there hasn't been much progress their relationship. I guess you could argue maybe this is before Dragon Quest and Secret of My Excess, perhaps. This is still sort of fairly early in the timeline, perhaps, but we see the Crystal Empire. So this would have to be after the Crystal Empire two-parter, which... So, no, it doesn't work. We see the Crystal Empire. This has to be after Secret of My Excess and Dragon Quest. I'm trying to sort of think that through in my mind. Could that work? Could we have the Crystal Empire take place before those two? No, I can't see that myself. I am kind of wondering why Spike is being paid in gems, though. Shouldn't he be paid in bits, and then use those bits to go out and buy gems? Wouldn't that sort of make a little bit more sense? But I suppose maybe it saves Spike the job of having to go out and buy them if they are directly giving him exactly what he needs. I don't know, but why do the ponies have these gems just randomly on them? I can understand why they would just randomly have bits on them. Everybody will occasionally just have a bit of money on them, but why would they just randomly have gems on them? And another sort of recurring theme that has reared its ugly head, which we haven't really sort of seen that much of since Season 1, is the CMC being obsessed with getting their cutie marks again. Again, we're sort of taking a back step in terms of progress of the characters. We're going back to Season 1 again. But overall, like I said, this was sort of more a sort of fun episode, and there were a lot of cool things and fun things in this episode. Fluttershy and Angel being the sort of main ones. The CMC getting excited about the Crystal Empire, that was kind of cool. And I like, just before they board on the train, they're all there getting all excited about going skydiving, and Spike comes along and just grabs all 3 of them, and they just sort of, hello, we're at the train station suddenly. They just sort of go along with it. That was kind of funny. My dogs are barking, Applejack referring to her hooves. And then Winona barks from underneath. Hey, look at that, they really are. Crack me up there. What else? Pinkie Pie. We didn't get that much Pinkie Pie in this episode, but for what we did get, it was pretty awesome. Yelling at Gummy, I love you more. Classic sort of Pinkie. I do sort of have to question why the dragon that saved the Crystal Empire is not being invited to an event there. But from what I'm hearing about next week's episode, we may find out the reason for that next week, perhaps. I mean, it was sort of mentioned at the start of the episode that Spike's a bit pissed off about not being invited, so we may get an explanation to that next week. Other than that, this was a fun episode. The story was, just sort of so-so, but, there was a lot of laughs in this episode. Vast improvement on Spike at Your Service, I thought, as a Spike episode, but this was just sort of more about having fun, this kind of episode, and there were a lot of sort of things that kind of pissed me off at the same time, so it was kind of a mixed bag, but I think the good does definitely outweigh the bad, but it's not really a fantastic episode or anything. It's just sort of on the sort of front end of okay, I would say. Maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. But yeah, there was a lot about this episode to enjoy, so yeah, it's worth seeing, I think, this episode. But as a fan of Spike and Rarity, and just as a fan of Spike in general, I kind of would like to see a bit more of these characters being developed, really. Okay, so I will see you next week for possibly an explanation as to what the main 6 were doing during the events of this episode. That's kind of intriguing, that could be kind of cool. Okay, see you soon.